Vanessa Kirby, let's start with the BAFTA awards. You looked, when you won the BAFTA for Best Supporting Actress for The Crown, you looked both stunned and thrilled. What was that experience like?
Do you know what, Tony? It was really surreal. I'd been nominated the year before and I hadn't won, and I just made a sort of decision to never expect anything, in a sense. And Margaret, was one of those jobs and one of those parts where I just couldn't have asked for anything more other than just getting the absolute joy and like honor of playing someone like that. So it was really unexpected, quite surreal. And I forgot everybody in my speech, including Ben Cowan, the director, and my mum. But yeah, it was lovely and just such a beautiful way to end what has been the best 3 years of my life, really.
And so the last time you talked to us at Gold Derby, it hadn't been yet announced who was going to be taking over the part of Margaret, and now we know that that's Helena Bonham Carter. First of all, what was your reaction to the fact that she was going to step in as Margaret?
Oh, I love it. She's amazing. She's so perfect. Let me turn that. She's so perfect for it, because I can see her process that she's going into it. And she's almost, it's always been for us about finding the essence or the spirit, not doing an impersonation. It was quite hard at the beginning. It was so daunting to go, oh my God, am I anything like this person? And will I remotely manage to capture anything about who they really were as real people? But she's just gone headfirst into it. It's amazing. She's asked for all my notes and all my playlists, and we've been sharing it so much, and she's become a great friend because of that. And I always knew that whoever it was, I just get to like share Margaret with them. And Helena's amazing. She's just the best actress, and she's so sort of deep and funny, and she just gets to do loads of fun stuff. I think she gets to do all the rows with Tony and stuff. I'm very jealous about all the drunken rows and like smashing plates and sort of metaphorically beating each other up. And Matthew Goode and I were dying to do some stuff like that. We didn't get to, so I feel so proud that it's Helena.
Well, and that kind of feeds into what I was going to ask next, is that you've had now some distance and some time from the character. Looking back on the 2 years that you played Margaret, do you see something different about her now that you've had some space removed from her?
To be honest, I don't feel. I suppose it was amazing to have 2 seasons to really explore somebody and to kind of grow up with them. And for me, I suppose the thing that I'm realizing more and more, every day I sort of tried to get to know her more, is just really sort of compelling and interesting dichotomy, really, of this conflict within her, which was somebody that was like the grandest and the most royal, and the person more than anything that enjoyed the privileges and titles. And in the same breath was somebody that was desperate to escape it. And those things were happening all the time concurrently. And in a sense, the whole 2 seasons for me really were an exploration of somebody trapped in between those 2 things all the time within themselves. And the more I look back, the more I reflect about sort of her incredible vulnerability and fragility that is masked by this absolute extrovert, life and soul of the party, most vivid, vibrant, potent energy. And I just, the more I let go of her in a way, the more I marvel at that, really. Her ability to encapsulate both those sort of colours of the palette, both those extreme end of the emotional spectrum, I guess.
And one of the things that Gore Vidal wrote about Margaret, that she was, and I'm paraphrasing, that she was too intelligent for her station. And here's a woman that certainly had a very specific image, and yet for you got to really kind of delve into the realities and the myths of that image. Was there anything particularly that, when you're researching her, as you're playing her, that surprised you, that you latched onto, that you felt like, oh, okay, I think this is who the real Margaret was?
There was two things. Firstly, I tried to read as much of her early life as possible, because all the first-hand accounts of her and all the stories that were written in the more kind of sensationalist sort of accounts of her were all about her later on in life, where she became quite kind of draconian. You know, she became very cold and difficult and bitter, I think, by lots of accounts. But I was like, who's the girl that became that? And that was my job, really, to set it up, even though it would have been the most fun to play that later on. And the two things that really helped me try and work that out was, everyone always said that she was such a sort of, she was a great mimic, a great comedian, that she was always wanted to be an actress or a ballerina. And so she had this like immense creative energy that was unexpressed. And she wasn't unable to explore any of those fields, really, because of her being sister to the Queen, so not even have a role. And she talks about that a lot as a character in the first season. And the other thing was that I read this sentence that always stuck out, which was that she's just a little girl looking for love, and she loses her dad, and she's continually searching for this hole, really, and this void that's within her. And that's also related to her sense of self and her position in the world, her place in the world. And season 2 really explores that, sort of somebody that's really trying to find their identity, and finds it in this new man, for better or worse. I think probably worse in the end. But that therefore, if she was a little girl looking for love, there was a sense of incompleteness, or a sense of neediness, or a sense of unfulfilled, I suppose, self, that was driving a lot of her actions. And even if that was to be the center of attention, or to emotionally blackmail your sister, or to seduce a man, whatever those things were, it all comes from that core belief that perhaps I'm not enough, even though I'm born into this world. Maybe I'm not enough because my sister seems to be, and why am I not? And then without that kind of, that attachment really to your father, and him dying like the way he did, and her feeling incredibly isolated and alone, I think, that was a sort of central core thing. I've talked for ages. Oh my God, I could talk about Margaret all day. It's pathetic.
Well, you've lived with her for quite some time. One of the things that strikes me about Margaret is that there's a certain element of tragedy, it seems to me, with her, not just in her own personal life, but the relationship between Margaret and Elizabeth seems like an exercise in what could have been. Do you think that had they not been born into this family, do you think that Margaret and Elizabeth would have had a much different relationship?
For certain. Something that struck me really early on was reading, again, when they were little, that I think in public, her parents used to say, her parents' friends in front of them would say, oh, the right one was born first. And so hearing that the right one was born first, that was the correct one to take on the job that your father has, and the thing, that your family is inherited, and that therefore maybe inferring that you're the wrong one. And also this idea that father always said, Elizabeth's my pride and Margaret's my joy. If you are, reaffirmed, if those qualities in you are affirmed by your parents and reinforced, in a sense, the joyful nature, but also perhaps the need for attention and the attention seeking, I imagine, would have been exacerbated in that sense. And especially if you thought that you weren't, you didn't have the qualities that your older sister had simply because she was born first. And it's interesting you said that about intelligence, because in a lot of the books it said Margaret just had such a sharp mind, but her sister was all given all the formal education because she was going to become queen. So Margaret's education was actually extremely patchy. So she had this natural intelligence, but again, she didn't have a vehicle in which to channel it. And so you can see all this kind of energy that she has, and this power, and it's sort of being spread at a sort of more wild, I suppose less focused way than if she'd been able to be what she wanted, perhaps a ballerina or something. And I think that without the uncle abdicating and then the king dying, they would have had completely different lives. Elizabeth just wanted to be a country woman and live in the country with her husband and have kids and dogs. Margaret might have been able to do totally different roles. So I think that's what the series really wanted to look at. I remember Peter really early on saying, this is tough. This is a brutal world. It's about privilege. It's about wealth. It's a set of extraordinary circumstances and a family in a really strangely extraordinary situation. But actually, the human beings at the center of it are people that haven't chosen to be there and are struggling just as much as any of us do.
Do you think that's one of the reasons why these works is because you have this facade of glamour and regality, but at the center of it is just this really kind of, as you said, brutal dynamic that seems to have its tentacles in everybody's family path. Is that one of the keys, do you think, to the success of the series?
Yeah, God, we never expected it in a million years. I mean, really, truthfully, when we were making it, we thought our mums would watch it. We didn't expect it to be sort of so universally, people to connect with it so universally, I guess. And I think you're totally right. I think it's probably because it's about fundamentally a family and about a man with terminal cancer who doesn't know how to tell his family, about a woman that has to take a job on at 25 years old that she never chose, about a sister rivalry, about loss, about wounds, about struggling to find your place in the world that I think you wouldn't expect, really. And I think we always felt inside it, filming the first season, actually, that it wasn't that the genre never overcame the characters in a way. It was always most important what my relationship was to Claire or to Victoria or to Matt. And the Peter-Margaret relationship became really important in my life, actually. I just emotionally became so involved with it, and I felt so proud that we could bring it back to kind of public consciousness in a sense that I think it had been really forgotten. So that felt like a real honor. But that fundamentally, yeah, these are people struggling through life, and I think it's almost refreshing to see these public personas who we might project onto and we might judge or feel prejudiced against or admire or deify or whatever the things that we do with these images of people, to go behind the images, to go behind the closed doors and to see Philip and Elizabeth in bed, do you know what I mean, in her nightgown, feeling totally fed up with the day, or Margaret, trashing her room because she's felt betrayed by somebody that she thought she'd give a shot, at loving her. And it always was really important to me that somehow I found a way for Margaret to be relatable, because I couldn't relate to the image of her. I had no idea who Princess Margaret was or really what the relevance was to me. So I really wanted to make sure that the kind of emotional truth of somebody going through something really peculiar and difficult was something we could all go, oh, yeah, I see the human being behind
that. So how has this role changed your career? Just what's it been like since you got this role?
Do you know what the difference is? I still pinch myself every day, because I'd worked for a long time on stage at home. I'd done a lot of things that not that many people had seen, and it never really occurred to me that people would watch things of their own accord, if that makes sense, on such a sort of wide scale. And I think the difference for me now is when I go for meetings or I meet people, they've watched The Crown of their own accord, not because my agents have been like, can you have a little look at what she's done or whatever, or happened to be in a theatre that I was in, a couple of years ago. So that in itself was, I will never not be grateful for that. And when we first started making this series, I remember sitting next to Ted Sarandos at Netflix, and Netflix was still an unquantifiable thing. People weren't quite, it just was emerging. It had House of Cards. But I remember Peter Morgan being really nervous that nobody would watch it. And he was really worried about it being dropped all in one day. And it was actually 4 days before the election. And he was like, no one's going to watch it. So everyone's going to be preoccupied with the election. So, we might as well just give up hope that anyone's going to watch it. So we had no idea. And I think Netflix as a platform is so cool. And it's just run by such brilliant people, really, truly brilliant, authentic people that have supported us so much, creatively, and allowed the freedom, really, to make the show in the way that they wanted to, and Audrey and Peter wanted to. That it means that people, in Argentina can watch it. Do you know what I mean? And I didn't expect that. Like, I was in Jordan on a war child trip recently, and people at the airport came up to me and called me Princess Margaret. It was so bizarre. It was such a bizarre experience for me. So yeah, Tony, it's more that people watch it of their own accord and enjoy it. It's just like a blessing. I'll never ever not be grateful for that.
And has it given you, because you do have such a background in theater, in doing, you know, Shakespeare and Tennessee Williams, and you're currently in rep doing Strindberg's Miss Julie. Has this experience given you a little bit more flexibility about the types of projects that you want to take on?
I think, I mean, there's just so many directors that I want to work with. I'll always come back to theatre, but there's just so many film directors that I'm just dying to work with, and I've always dreamed of doing. And Stephen Daldry was one of them. So now getting to meet some of them, or meeting on projects and stuff, it just feels like so exciting, and I just feel totally ready for it. You know, I think a lot of it's about timing and also seeing the industry from all these different sides. I think coming up too quickly is probably quite a risky thing to do, and I definitely didn't. So I've seen all different sort of machinations of the industry from different angles, and watched different people work and learnt so much from them. And I'm so proud of how Claire's doing. It's just amazing. And it's also a real passion of mine to make the things I want to eventually, and also to really find women on screen. I think both Claire and I felt so inspired, where the men were in relationship to us, and we really got to explore over time in this series, you know, incredibly complicated women, and there haven't been in the past enough parts like that, where you really got to go there and really go deep with a character. And I think that's going to happen more and more now, and I'm really excited about that. It definitely feels like times are shifting, and it's very exciting. I feel really proud to be part of the industry at this time, really.
And you actually get to, you know, you're jumping from, you know, The Crown and into you know, theater, and then into big budget action world with Mission Impossible coming up. What was it like to jump into that big budget Hollywood world?
I mean, totally surreal, because I was actually filming that at the same time I was doing season 2. So I was like taking off my Margaret wig, like in North London, getting in a car, getting on the Eurostar, and then filming night shoots with Mission Impossible. And I think there might be a bit of Margaret in the car, because I was like, I think there was a bit of seepage. I'm not. But it was just a completely different experience. I mean, that was part of the reason I chose it. I always want to do things that are totally different to each other, and push myself, even if it fails, or even if it's, you know, as long as I learn from it and try and become a better actress. That's the thing that matters, really, the experience of it. And I'd never done action before. I thought I was like sort of okay exercise, but no, my God. When we started training, I was in Paris and I was literally wheezing on the floor, like crawling, like, don't let me go any further. We'd only run like 10 minutes. So it's an amazing challenge in that sense. And like stunts is something I'd never done. And I literally watched the master of stunts just do this like genius. I mean, he's just a complete master at it. So it was quite a new experience for me. And that was very cool. But yeah, I mean, sets are obviously all run differently, but I just want to be on as many different ones as possible and play as many different people as possible. But Margaret, I feel, is going to be hard to beat, actually, Tony, because she's, I mean, I just got so lucky, didn't I? So lucky.
Well, and we were lucky as well. So Vanessa Kirby, thank you so much. Congratulations on the BAFTA. Best of luck in what's coming, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Tony. You're awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really honored.